The discussions have been that it will move a lot of people out of poverty, create a lot of employment, and the African industrialization drive will be most boosted because the TVET has started operationalizing. But the discussion within the youth context has been if indeed TVET has the potential to drive the AFTA. So today we want to look at generally what is in TVET, what opportunities lie there, what challenges is it facing, what potential does it have to drive the AFTA. So my first question, Mr. Kofi Asare, who is the African Education Watch Executive Director. You are well known in the education space in Africa and worldwide. We want to find out from you what opportunities are there in TVET and what does TVET have to drive the AFTA generally?
Well, AFTA basically is about countries on the continent taking advantage of international trade, within the continent, strengthening cross-country trade and taking advantage of where we have comparative strengths, and leverage on the opportunity that the market provides. However, we must always note that without production, without productivity, it's difficult to assess markets and optimize revenue and profit. So the capacity of countries to maximize the opportunities AFTA brings is more or less, incumbent on the availability of a productive skills base, because skills is key in ensuring productivity within the context of quality production and within the context of having economies of scale. Now, across the continent, various countries have TVET systems within which skills is provided. Within the continent, the largest producer of skills is the informal sector. And we know the challenges with the informal sector skills training. It is largely uncoordinated, largely unregulated, largely unstandardized. And then there's also the issue of quality assurance. And in many instances, skills provided in the informal sector are not relevant to the productive sectors of the economy. So the question we ask ourselves is, with the informal sector being the lead in providing skills training, how can government ensure that the quality and then the content and the relevance of skills training or skills being churned out in the informal sector situate within the priority economic sectors of these countries and for that matter the continent, which then gives assurance that governments are positioning themselves to take full advantage of AFTA and enhance their productivity. That is the big question for African countries.
Are African countries doing enough in this regard? What is the current status of the TVET if you look at some key indicators in Africa?
Well, across the continent, I must admit that very little has been done to formalize skills training in the informal sector. About 90% of skills training takes place in the informal sector, and efforts to formalize that process is not the priority of many governments. And so that actually is part of the key issues that need to be addressed ahead of taking full advantage of AFTA. There are tremendous efforts by some governments to enhance the quality of skills training from the formal sector. And efforts being made by governments include the development of standardized TVET qualification frameworks, promotion of training in non-traditional TVET and traditional TVET, review of formal training systems, integrating entrepreneurship, employment and employability within curriculum content in TVET, enhancing the marketability of TVET, aligning training to labor market needs, developing labor market information systems, and ensuring that LMIS inform the direction of TVET, and most importantly, making TVET more accessible. In Ghana, for instance, we have a free TVET program, which ensures that the youth who are interested in entering TVET at the secondary level acquire training in certificate level TVET, for free. So these are all interventions that governments are undertaking. I situate the growing demand for secondary education within one of the key opportunities TVET must take advantage of, because as the continent continues to expand access to secondary education, with about 8 or 9 countries having free senior education or free secondary education policies in place, including South Africa, including Sierra Leone, including Ghana, etc., Kenya. It is important that the increasing demand for secondary education by the youth is complemented with a significant fraction or portion of that demand being skills-oriented secondary education, so that we don't produce, millions of secondary school graduates who are not employable. Then instead of us taking advantage of the potential of, enhanced access to secondary education, within the context of the benefit of AFTA, then we end up creating national security crisis, because you are training teeming numbers of secondary school leavers who have no skills. So countries expanding secondary education within the context of TVET or skills-based secondary education is key, ensuring that we have that middle level or lower middle level manpower force ready to drive the AFTA process, continent-wide.
That's very good. This goes to the next question, which, because of what you said, there have been the perception of TVET amongst the youth, for which reason they would prefer to rather do a more secondary education, but forego TVET schools. Has that perception changed? And during the COVID, we see that a lot of people started taking up entrepreneurship job on their own, going for trades of that kind. Was that a trigger, or is the percentage still what it is? Is it still a high perception amongst the youth and students generally?
Traditionally, TVET has an issue of being perceived to be second fiddle to grammar education. And perhaps it's because it originated from the informal sector. In Ghana, for instance, we've been struggling over the years to promote the participation of youth within the secondary education system or second cycle education system in TVET. But we've made some significant strides this year. Prior to this year, the participation of the youth in secondary school in TVET was less than 5%. But this year, I think we've moved to about 8% because of the free TVET program. So yes, desirably, and consistent with international best practices, at least 40% of the secondary education population must be involved in TVET. That is a standard in Western Europe, in Eastern Europe, and Southeast Asia. In all the countries that we count as model TVET countries, at least 40% of secondary school students are TVET students. We are now around 8% or 7%. So yes, it's a challenge, because if negative perceptions persist, it is difficult for you to promote participation. So that is one of the areas that governments need to work at, to strengthen the level of participation of the youth in TVET by reorienting parents, to change their attitudes and practices towards TVET, and also reorient teachers to adapt approaches in teaching that makes TVET attractive. When teaching, examples teachers give of honorable occupations should include TVET occupations and not always a pilot or a doctor. So parents, teachers, the entire community have key roles to play in ensuring that the perception accorded TVET which is actually a misconception, changes. But let me indicate that, yes, to enhance participation of the youth in TVET, we need to change our perception towards TVET as second fiddle. But the reality is that our government haven't incentivized TVET sufficiently. And I'll give you an example. If you went to secondary school or you went to the university to do medicine or any humanities program, you get a certain amount of money as student loan supposed to be used to finance your study. If you did TVET, you get the same amount of money. But we all know that TVET is the most expensive venture in terms of its practical nature. It's heavily practical. So in no way should you give a TVET student the same amount of money as study support or study grant as the student doing accounting. So our straitjacket approach to incentivizing the learning of TVET or supporting the learning of TVET alone tells us that we have not incentivized or prioritized TVET, which will not encourage people to pursue TVET because they know that if they get to the tertiary level, they'll be given the same level of attention as humanities students, bearing in mind that TVET is a very, very expensive program to learn. So beyond changing perceptions and attitudes and practices, misconceptions about TVET at the household level and at the school level, it is very important for government to be deliberate in incentivizing TVET. For example, there are countries where immediately you pursue a TVET program at tertiary or secondary level. When you complete secondary level and you don't want to continue to tertiary level, there is support for startup. Okay, but in this country, when you complete your TVET program, you need to go and contest with other students who did other programs for startup financing. So where lies incentivization? So yes, we need to change our attitude and perceptions towards TVET so that it will enhance participation. But if our governments are intentional in incentivizing TVET, we are going to get more and more of the youth participating in TVET, because the assurance that TVET will provide you a ready job after completion or will provide you opportunity for startup alone should interest a lot of our youth.
That's a quick broadening the scope on the supply chain from the point where government, like you indicate, the Ghana government has done a free TVET. They've been able to increase the enrollment from 5% to 8%. However, when they are done with school, they do not have opportunity to get funding to have a startup business. So to what end?
You see, the whole TVET thing is a system and it's interwoven. Okay, so having that system, that organic system with various parts fully functioning is key for the functioning of the entire system. Every part is important. Okay, if the TVET system is running programs that are market-led, it means that industry needs the skills being delivered. Okay? So you need to make sure you get it right, that you are training people in market-led skills. If you get it right, then it means that after technical institute at the second cycle level, after your free TVET, if you pursued a free TVET program in, let's say, computer technology or computer hardware, you should be able to be a computer repairer after secondary school if you are unable to proceed to tertiary. Now, because we know that there's a high demand for computer technicians in a fast-growing economy driven by ICTs, finding a job within that sector shouldn't be difficult. You understand? So all the state has to do is to facilitate the industry linkages. As you are in school, you are doing attachments, and then you are being linked to industry. Then you are supported to take a decision whether you want to be an employee after school or you want to start your business. So as part of our programs, we should have entrepreneurial course models for people who, not for people, but for everyone must have an entrepreneurial course model. Not just a subject being taught, but also something more practical. So that when you complete your study, you choose between starting a business, in this case, computer technology or hardware repairs, or going for an employment option. All this will also not take place if employers are not encouraged, if they are not motivated to accept graduates. And that is another angle that we are not doing too well. The assumption is that once you've completed a trade or you complete a program in TVET and it's in an area that is marketable, they are just readily waiting for you. It is not entirely the case. Industry are ready to employ people who have some level of job experience. So even though you did computing, even though you did, automotive repairs, beauty and cosmetics, welding and fabrication, whatever program you did, industry is looking for someone who has some considerable work experience. So how do you motivate industry to accept fresh graduates in TVET? In Kenya, the Minister of Finance has gone to Parliament to get a legislation which provides that companies that admit TVET students who are between 1 and 3 years of graduation receive tax incentives. You understand? So if you go to other countries like in Luxembourg and in Austria, there are incentives for companies that employ TVET students who are disabled. So there are various incentives within the industrial system where a certain benefit inures to employers for employing fresh graduates. Because don't forget that whenever an employer is employing a fresh graduate in TVET, that employer is playing that key role of facilitating your pre-employment training and then the early part of your work learning. So the employer invests much in your training before you transition fully into the world of work. And normally most employers don't want to invest in training. So they want to go in for people who have already acquired certain competencies. For that to happen, incentives like tax reliefs encourages employers to admit such students. So it is very important to have such systems, within the TVET landscape, so that yes, you are training people within economically productive or market-led, skills areas, but you are building systems. You are building systems to ensure that there is proper linkage with industry, and then there is enthusiasm by industry to demand the skills of newly trained TVET graduates.
You are so well spoken about the role of government and business. Maybe you can have the role of the AFTA proper. What should they be doing?
Well, AFTA is a generic being. AFTA simply is African governments. Okay, we are going to make AFTA work. AFTA provides opportunity for Ghana to be able to sell their products in Cote d'Ivoire without borders, seamless international trade. How does Ghana take advantage of that opportunity? Ghana must produce, not just produce, but produce with quality. Not just produce with quality, but produce with economy of scale. Okay, so for you to enhance your productivity, you need a solid skills base. Apart from the capital injection, you need a solid skills base, because underneath every production or productivity is quality manpower. So our government has a key responsibility to first of all share best practices in skills development in the productive sectors of the African economy. In agri, how are we sharing best practices in agricultural production and agro-processing? There are best practices in the area of floriculture, for instance, in Kenya. There are best practices in the area of horticulture, for instance, in Ghana. There are best practices in the area of vegetable production in the Sahelian regions. Okay, there are best practices in animal husbandry, for instance, in some part of West Africa, in Sudan and whatever it is. Every part of Africa has an area that they have comparative advantage. But there should be something to learn. Ghana should be able to learn how to cultivate tomatoes in commercial quantities from Niger. So that even though you are importing, you are also leveraging on that to produce and also export. In the same way, Niger should also have a way of finding out how Ghana is able to grow cocoa. So that yes, you may have comparative advantages on trade, but you should also have some enhancement in the areas that you have advantage, so that it doesn't appear as if one country is specializing on an aspect of our international trade needs, and other countries are. I don't believe in specialization in that respect. I believe countries must invest more resources in the areas where they have relative advantages. So we have lots of lessons to share as countries on the continent. Apart from that, there are countries that are more developed than others. The agric economy in Egypt, for instance, is one of the most developed in the country, on the continent. So all countries in sub-Saharan Africa have lessons to learn from how Egypt is doing. What is Egypt getting right in their approach to agriculture, for instance? Then we look at the industrial economy. In the area of manufacturing, what is South Africa getting right? So we learn from each other so that we build on all the sectors that we need to enhance, to take maximum advantage of the opportunities AFTA brings. So cross-country collaboration, lessons sharing, are key. Apart from that too, our countries need to open their borders. We've seen so many protocols being adapted on the African continent that are beautifully adapted on paper, but ends up not being implemented as agreed. We've seen so many ECOWAS protocols. There are protocols on the mobility of goods across the continent, but we know that we have cross-border issues, and economic mobility is still a challenge, even within ECOWAS. So yes, beyond protocols like AFTA, countries should actualize their commitment to really create a seamless, cross-border international trade, where countries can trade with other countries without, being subjected to both physical and non-physical borders and boundaries. So the political commitment of countries to the AFTA arrangements is key to its successful implementation.
Asare, in sharing your last comment, I want you to highlight or tell us if you believe that Africa can ever get very much industrialized, and then if the unemployment situations will reduce, and if you believe TVET indeed has the potential to drive the
Yeah, I honestly feel that yes, we have the potential to grow, take advantage of AFTA, grow our manpower base, grow our economies, produce much efficiently, and export even beyond AFTA. Yes, the potential is there, but we need to first of all put in place the critical building blocks to maximize that potential. As I've said, we need to build our skills base. Our government must be seen to be investing in skills development, in human capital development, and then also we must invest in science and technology. Africa is not interested in investing in science and technology. Our governments relegate the aspect of research and development to donors. And Ghana is an example. Our science and technology and R&D institutions, CSIR, about 14 agencies under CSIR, you go there and see. Donors must intervene for science and research institutions to be able to have funding to conduct research. Governments are only paying salaries, So we need to be intentional about funding R&D, because you just can't enhance your productivity if you are producing using the same old rudimentary technology. you must adapt technology. And you can't continue to always import technology, which is expensive. So you must invest in research and development, strengthen the capacity of your research and development institutions, the faculties, the universities, and etc. And then create linkages between industry and the research institutions so that whatever they produce in research will be consumed to the benefit of industry. So that's what we need to do. I think once we get our act right, I'm sure we should be good in taking good advantage of the opportunities of AFTA and grow our continent, build our skills base, and then enhance the quality of life of our young people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Asare, for sharing your thoughts with us.
You're welcome.